Hello, welcome to my life. I'm 91 years old, and I'll soon, very soon, a month or so away, I'll be 92. I'm a grandma and a great-grandma and a great-great-grandma in February. My name is Evelyn Bernice Collins Ainsworth, and I'm 91 now, born February the 2nd, 1924. All my life, in my young years, up to the time I was about 7 years old, we lived on farms. My dad was a great irrigator, and everybody wanted him to work on their farm because he was so good at irrigating and taking care of the water, which was very precious out in that country. That was up in Colorado, in Alt, Eden, Greeley, you almost name the little towns we lived in it. We moved to Denver when I was about 7 years old, and have big family memories there, a lot of family. My grandmother came from a large family, and my dad came from a large family. And I got a Model A car, a big excitement, 1939 Model A car. Gee, it was pretty. I'd saved my pennies and dimes and nickels when I worked, and I had to find $500 to buy that car. My mother's name was Hazel Bernice Lishner before she married my dad, who was Edward Esther Collins. He was the oldest boy in his family. I think they had 11 children. And my dad was the oldest. All were boys except 2 daughters. And my dad went to war in World War I and worked, and when he wasn't in the war, he was working on farms or locally in town. My mom and dad had separated at that time, and my dad was living up in Greeley, and my mom was living in Denver. And we hardly ever used the word divorce. That was a nasty word in those days. My mother liked to work with her hands. She was a great cook, and she was handy with a sewing machine, and she sewed items, and they would sell them. That's during the Second Depression, and that was a big depression and a very hard time for a lot of families. There were bread lines all over town at the bakeries for old day old bread. I remember those days. I remember standing in line and bringing a bag of bread home for my family. One summer my mother became very ill. My grandmother came home and tried to doctor her and check her. Fever kept climbing up, couldn't find out. Doctors came to the house then, and they come in and check her. Every week they come and check her, sometimes twice a week. I remember those days, and she just didn't get better. They finally put her in the hospital and discovered that she had ruptured appendix and gangrene had set in. Consequently, they had to remove all of her female organs, etc., and she still passed away. That was a hard time for the family. We were young enough to realize that we didn't have a mother anymore, and young enough to realize that our dad and mother were not living together. I moved in with my aunt and uncle after my mother died because they had 2 little babies and kept their mother pretty busy. I lived with my aunt and uncle and helped them with the children, but I kept begging to come back to my grandma's house because that's where my brothers were. Finally, my uncle and my grandmother gave in and let me come back to her house. And I lived with her and my brothers, and that was a happy day for me. I loved those other little boys because he had 3 little boys. Dick was the oldest one, and then Dick, and then Tom was the next one, and then Bob was the 3rd boy. And they were part of our family, just like my brothers. They came to our house sometimes daily, or especially in the summertime when they weren't in school. My dad was in the First World War, and finally, after all these years, they decided that the government could pay them their pension for being released and accumulate the money that they gained, were able to get while they were in the service. My dad brought his check and came down and showed it to my grandmother. He still was living out of town. So he came in and he said, I want to give you some of this money for the children. And consequently he did. and he told her he wanted them to buy each child to have something they really wanted. And so consequently, my younger brother got a wagon, a beautiful red wagon. We thought it was gorgeous. Used it for a lot of things. We'd raise vegetables in the summertime, and the boys would go out and tail up in a little wagon and pedal it along the street to the neighbors. And some of them didn't have little gardens like my grandmother could raise. Anything she touched turned green. My grandmother's name was Lulu, L-U-L-U, Ellen Rothwell, before she married my grandfather. And I was always there, she was always there, and she was the light of my life. And to this day, I think her so often, more than I did my mother, because I knew her so much better than my mother. And I lived with her a long time. Eventually, when I was working for the Second World War, we were modifying B-24s and B-17s at the airport, putting the oxygen lines and electrical lines into them. And I always remember what my grandmother was there for. She had something left over for dinner or whatever meal we were going to eat. And because we worked shifts, we worked 10-hour shifts, 7 days a week for 2.5 years. And it was a big time in my life because I met some really close friends. My grandmother was a great woman. She believed in the Lord, and she saw it with her in Sunday school every Sunday, even my brothers. And they didn't give very much argument until they were older teenagers, and they finally decided they could put their foot down and say no. But she didn't fuss with them. She figured they were old enough to know what they wanted. She was a great cook, and she taught me how to cook. And she didn't measure things in a cup or a spoon. She just took a pinch or a hunk of lard in her hand to make a pie crust. She just told by the weight, and she made it so fast and so quick. I never did learn that trick. I had to measure mine when I learned, because I didn't trust myself. My grandmother was 91 when she passed away. I was so grateful that she lived so long. And she had a fairly healthy life till the very last year or so. My grandmother was married 3 times. I put so much emphasis on her life because she was such a big part of my life. And she had 5 children, and 2 of them were tiny babies, and they died. And the doctors came to the house then too, and she had those babies. And then her husband worked for the power company, as I said, and they had a bad explosion, and they had that, and he was killed. And so consequently, she went several years unmarried. And she met a man that was a restaurant man, and they worked in his restaurant for several years. But he got kind of tipsy once in a while, and she couldn't put up with that. And they gradually separated, but they remained friends. And I know she still had feelings for him. But anyway, those 2 babies that passed away, I think they were buried in the same grave as Fitzsimmons funeral park out in Denver, Colorado. My grandmother delivered a lot of babies. She delivered all her nieces and nephews, and she delivered all of her grandchildren, all 10 of us, 9 of us. And she was always there before the doctor got there. He let her know when he was going to be there, but he was always late, always a busy man. And sometimes they were traveling in old cars, or before that, a buggy and a horse. And so she told him that she told us about that time in her life. It was during those Depression years that she was trying to raise us, and it was a hard, hard time. Every penny counted, and we learned how to save a 10-cent piece out of a quarter if we didn't save anything else. So anyway, and we never took anything for granted. It was free, or we had to work for it. And that was the main thing, one of the main things that she taught us. She had an apartment upstairs of her house, and it had a big living room and bedroom combined, closet space, kitchen, and we had to share the bathroom downstairs. But we managed, and we had rules and regulations, and she saw that us kids my brothers and myself, we kept the rules going, or she would be unhappy. But that's back when we spent 5 cents for a movie on a Saturday, and we'd probably see 2 real films and 3 or 4 comedies. Was there the whole afternoon, and that was a cheap way to spend our afternoon. We didn't go every Saturday, but we went occasionally. That was a treat. And then on Sunday, if we compulsively talked my grandmother into letting us, we'd go to a 10-cent movie, something real good we wanted to see, a musical or something. And I remember one time my dad, he bought a pack of cigarettes for 10 cents back in those days. And he smoked Camels at that time. I remember that cigarette package. Anyway, he had a dime in his pocket, and my younger brother and myself had a dime saved up, but Don didn't have a dime saved up. He was probably shooting marbles for cash, as far as I know. And anyway, he talked my dad out of that last dime my dad had that day, so he'd go to the movies with us. And we always enjoyed going to the good old movies, and we had to walk about 4 blocks to get there and 4 blocks home. But it was worth every walk and every step. I went to school in Eagleton's elementary school. They didn't call it elementary school, they just called it Eagle School. And we went to Lake Junior High School, and then we went to the West Denver High School where we graduated from, all 3 of my brothers and me. We go with a bunch of the kids in the neighborhood. We all gather together in the evening time and play we were hiding something. Anyway, we played games, blind man buff and all that stuff, but then we have to play hide games. And anyway, then we'd end up wanting to go up to we were just almost teenagers. My brother Don was a teenager, and I was knocking the door for teenage. And we'd walk up almost probably a good 3.5, 4 miles to the creamery, where they would pile ice cream up on top of the carton, way up high, and you'd get more than a gallon if you could raise $1 for that ice cream. So we'd all chip in the pennies and dimes that we had and get $1 together and go get the ice cream. I had some great teachers in school, and it took me a while to get acquainted with a lot of them, but I had one in junior high school. I had super teachers in elementary school. My sister Wessel, she was a widow, but I just adored her, and she was so good to me. And that was the 6th grade. And my 5th grade teacher, oh, she was special. Her name was Mrs. Cook, and she gave me a watch, and I still have that watch today that she gave me when she got a new one. And I was so thrilled with it. It's a gold watch, and the gold is real, but I treasured it, and I wore it, and I never had a watch before, and I thought that was so special. And she made me see a different world. She made me see what I could find out in books. I just loved the stories that she read to us at the end of the day. And Mrs. Wessel let me fix her tea, and she'd bring her own sandwich, but she'd have a cup of tea, and I could go downstairs in the school and heat water up and fix her tea, bring it back up and put it on a little table for her, and she'd have her lunch. And I thought that was quite a privilege for me to serve her that way. My grandmother taught us how to serve. We served the neighbors, we served anybody we could. She had family coming out of her ears sometimes, making beds down for them and sleeping on the corner on the floor or whatever she could do. And because we didn't have all that extra bedding stuff to put them out. I remember in high school, when I first started high school, she fixed me some clothes to wear. Usually I had a dress made over out of somebody else's dress that they didn't like, and I had I had enough money saved up that summer to buy a skirt and a sweater and a blouse, and I remember how pleased I was to go to school. But I wasn't very smart insofar as the skirt, because it was a wool skirt, and it stained like everything. I think I dropped everything in the world on that skirt, and I tried to go home and sponge it off, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And it have to be dry cleaned, and that's when I'd have to save money for something I didn't want to save it for. I worked at Stoney's Hamburger's place in the summertime. The lady that rented the apartment upstairs for my grandmother, she worked there just to bake the pies. She'd go in early in the morning and bake pies for the restaurant for the day. And she was quite well known for her homemade pies. But she talked the manager into hiring me to help serve the customers. And I was thrilled with the job because I made a little money. And that was a hard thing to come by back then. And I did a lot of babysitting too on the side. All over Denver. I ride the streetcar every direction to do babysitting, and they'd pay my fare to do it. And had some special people. I still remember them. Lots of things this old mind forgets, but there's some things that stick with you. I took my graduation money that I received from different friends and relatives and took a train to San Diego. That was my trip for graduation. And I was going to get a job and stay with my aunt and uncle and her children. And she had 3 daughters. And it was a great time in my life, a great experience. But I sure did miss my grandmother. And anyway, we worked at Consolidated Aircraft. And what we did was make spars that fit in the wings for the airplanes. And so we were drilling and cleaning inside the plates of metal where the crumbs would fall off the metal, and we had to screen on that, do that kind of thing. And a little paperwork on the side, and then finally after about 6 months, I went back to Denver to see my grandma. And I wasn't going to stay in Denver, but I was going to get my visit out and have some hugs and kisses from her. And so then I went back to San Diego about 2 months, I think it was around 2 months later, and went back, got my old job back, and so went back to work for another 6 months, and then I went back to Denver again. This is my grandmother's backyard, and it looks kind of funny because the broom that you only used outside sitting hanging on the back, and the laundry tubs. We had a wash machine, but you had to use a laundry tub to rinse the clothes in. And so we park it right next to the bathroom, cycle hose into the tubs, get fresh water, then we'd have to dip it out, dump it in the toilet, get rid of it to get new fresh rinse water. It was a fun time. And this backyard, there was a lot of memories. She had 4 apple trees there, and I remember always picking up apples. My brothers had always tried to get out of that job. They said, "We'll shovel snow, you pick up the apples." Anyway, we had big family picnics out there, a nice shady backyard, and as many as 40 and 50 people, and everybody brings a friend. But some of my girlfriends had a big picnic out there one time, and I don't know who else came out of the woodwork, but I had cousins that come from out I hadn't seen for ages, and we had a great picnic out there in that backyard. I remember that picnic especially. And this little doll I had when I was about 9, 10 years old, and my aunt and uncle had purchased this for me for Christmas, and they made clothes for it. My aunt made clothes for it, and I thought I was in hog heaven with a doll that I could dress and undress. Anyway, Cynthia took it and had it refinished and a new dress made for it, and I certainly have appreciated it. Had it sitting on my dresser in a glass case all these years, so I appreciate that.